just finished a section where Solomon was talking about 26 different times that happen in a person's life. And those times can happen at almost any instant, can't they? And now all of a sudden, we read Ecclesiastes 3:9, and he says this, "What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth?" And we go, what are you doing? Right? You know, here you are. He started those first 8 verses in Ecclesiastes after talking about man's labor. Remember, he was involved in this big experiment, was he not? And trying to find out what the meaning, the purpose of life for man is. And one of those was labor, wasn't it? And he had said that labor is nothing but vanity and vexation of spirit if all we do is what? No. If all we do is die. Okay? If all we do is die, then our work is just vanity and vexation of spirit. Then all of a sudden he just stopped and he goes into this discussion about those 26 things, and then all of a sudden he comes back and he says, "What profit hath he that worketh and that wherein he laboreth?" It's almost as if in the course of his studies and in the course of his research, he learns about those 26 things. And he thinks, you know, I need to stop and I need to discuss those. And he does, and now he gets back to what? Now he gets back to labor again, doesn't he? And talking about labor. Very, very interesting. If there are things that will happen in life, regardless of who we are, regardless of what we do, then guess what? What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? Will the things that Solomon had just listed happen whether we work or don't work? Oh yes. There's going to be a time to be born and there's going to be a time to die, isn't there? There's going to be a time when we're happy and there's going to be a time when we're sad. There's going to be a time to root up and there's going to be a time to plant. There's going to be a time to tear down. There's going to be a time to build. Regardless of what you're doing in life, there's going to come those times. And Solomon thought, you know, if all of these things are going to happen to us anyway, what profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? Wow. Could it be that Solomon focuses on labor in this manner because he knows the importance individuals put on what? On work. Okay? On work. Work is the God of many people, is it not? It's the God of many people. It is the one God in our society today that even the church believes can be put before the true and living God. Do you know that? Is that a true statement? Now, I made a powerful statement, guys. I said work is the one God that even the church of the living God will allow us to put before God. Isn't that true? Oh yeah. I'm not saying that we do that and it's right. I'm just saying that we do that. Right? As long as you're working, you can be excused from every act of worship, every work of the church, everything, as long as you're what? As long as I'm working. Well, I was working. Oh, okay. That's fine, you know. Why weren't you at worship? I was just working, you know. Why hadn't you been to worship in 6 months? I've just been working. Why didn't you come to vacation? I'm just working. Why don't you come to the gospel meeting? I got to work. Guys, work has become what? Work has become our God. But notice that work cannot stop the various seasons of life from happening. And 2, all of the benefits of our work will terminate when? at death. There's no doubt about it. Thus, Solomon says it is vanity and vexation of spirit. Now notice verse 10. I've seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. Notice that Solomon is actively involved in this research, isn't he? Wouldn't you have loved to have been right there as one of Solomon's right-hand men? Because he makes some statements that sometimes we just pass over. Okay? He'll say something like this, my heart's desire. Right? I did everything my heart desired. And then here he says, I have seen the travail. It isn't like Solomon just farmed this work out. It isn't like he just gave his assistants some things to do. Go out and find out about this. Go out and find out about that and come back and communicate it to me. Oh no. You want to know what Solomon's doing? He is actively involved in the research. He is actively involved in this project. And he says, I have seen the travail. That little word travail means simply this, employment, occupation, task, or work. I have seen the work that men do, he says. But notice that these jobs are given to man by whom? This is what's interesting. I have seen the travail, the occupations, the jobs, which God hath given to the sons of men. True or false? God gives us our jobs. He does. So God came to you and He says, I want you to be a teacher. Ah, there you go. Now notice what he says. He says, I have seen the travail or occupation which God hath given to the sons of men. It isn't that God has ordained you to be in a certain occupation. Okay? But God gave you the ability to accumulate knowledge. God gave you the abilities and talents that you have. God gave you the personality that you have in order to fulfill what? Certain jobs and certain duties and certain obligations. Okay? Are there some things that you could not ever do? Yeah, I could never, okay, be a brain surgeon. Okay? Couldn't do that. See, first of all, you have to be interested in science. I mean, that helps a little. And Vic's got very little interest in science. Okay? Secondly, the insides of a person, it can't bother you. Okay? When you cut that skull off and you see that brain, that can't bother you. That bothers me. Okay? And then you have to have very careful hands, don't you? You don't want me wiggling around in your brain. I promise you that. You go in one way and you sure come out another. There's no doubt about it. Okay? Jim, what were you going to say, bud? Absolutely. Yeah, he fulfilled the shortcomings and the gaps, and he still put Moses in the position where he needed to be, didn't he? And so, yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. Can people have different jobs through the course of their life? Yeah. Used to, years and years and years ago, and my mom and dad, they were kind of this mindset, especially my mother. You get with a job, and guess what you do? You stay with that job how long? Forever. Right? 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Yeah, now that was my mama's. That was drilled in her head. Okay? She stayed at Neary Glass Company 26 years, and the only reason she got out of it is because they shut the doors. Okay? That is the only reason. She'd be working there from the grave if, she could. That was just drilled into her. Well, here's what's interesting. In a person's life today, a young person's life today, they will make 10 job changes in their life. 4 of them will be radically different careers. Isn't that unbelievable? Who would have ever thought that 40, 50, 60 years ago? You got in a career, you stay with that career forever. Not so anymore, okay? Young people are constantly switching careers and jobs, okay? And but what we need to remember is that God is always doing what? It is God who has given us the talent and the ability to acquire knowledge and skills to do those jobs. Therefore, He is the one responsible for our having those positions. When I was thinking about this point, notice the note down there. There are a lot of different kinds of jobs out there, guys. There are jobs in our world that you and I just don't even have a clue exist. Do you know that? I went into my eye doctor's office once, and I was sitting there waiting for my eye appointment. And there was a man in there, and he had a little machine. And he had a big rack of sunglasses. He'd take that little machine, and he'd scan that sunglass, or that lens of that sunglass, and then he'd just throw it in a box. Then he'd scan it again, throw it in a box. Scan it again, throw it in a box. Scan another one, keep it up there. I thought, what's he doing? Okay, so finally, I couldn't stand it no more. You know, it's kind of like Popeye, done stands it, I can't stand this no more. Okay, and I looked at him, I said, what in the world are you doing? He said, oh, I'm scanning these sunglasses to see if they still have the UV protection that they need to have. I said, that's your job? He said, yeah, that's what I do. He says, you know, once they sit on a rack for so long, he says the UV protection can diminish and you don't sell them if they're below a certain, standard. And I just throw them in the box and get rid of them. Who knew that job existed? I didn't. Unbelievable. Anybody ever heard of a ramp agent? Yeah. When I was at Federal Express, I trained to be a ramp agent. Okay, most people don't even know what a ramp agent is. Okay, and the ramp agent is almost as important as the pilot, believe it or not. Okay, there were 9 containers that went on the plane that we were responsible for. That plane flew from Memphis to Toronto, Canada, and then it would return the next morning. So, a flight in and flight out. 9 containers of freight on that airplane. The ramp agent's responsibility, it was 2 or 3-fold, but primarily 2-fold, okay? Number 1, to make certain that the freight got in those containers, got on that plane, and that plane got out on time. 4:10 was our cutoff time. That plane had to be out of the gate at 4:10. If not, the ramp agent got dinged, okay? And he was responsible. And the reason it was so hard is because sometimes freight comes down hard. And what I mean by that is the freight doesn't get there till late in the night. And so those last 20 or 30 minutes is when you get the bulk of your freight. And you're trying to scan it and check it and get it in those containers and out on that plane ASAP. So that as soon as a guy pushes that plane back 1 foot, that plane is thought to be taken off at that time. You're clear. So, 4:10, you better be out of the ramp. Well, that's one thing he had to do. The second thing is he had to make certain that those containers were loaded on that plane in a certain place as far as their weight was concerned. Okay? They would check the weights. They would then align those containers on that plane so that plane was perfectly balanced when it flew in the air. He would then hand that to someone like me, and we would go out to the tarmac and load the plane. And he had given me the number of the containers and the exact order that they were to go in. And I'd have to tell a tug driver, you go get that one. He'd go get that one, we'd load it. Go get the next one, load it. Sometimes we'd get them wrong. That weren't good. That means you had to pull one off, pull 2 off, put them back on in the right order. Oh, it was unbelievable. But a ramp agent had a big job. If that plane was not loaded correctly, there was danger in flight to that airplane. But see, we don't know these jobs are out there, okay? And that's just 2 little ones, okay? There's some probably that you could tell me that are even more unique than those. But it just blows your mind. But God gives us our jobs, folks. Notice this. God wants us to be exercised in our jobs. which God hath given to the sons of men to be what? Exercised in it. Man. Brown Driver and Briggs says the word means to be occupied with, to be busy with. God didn't put man on earth to do nothing. God never intended for us to be on this earth and just sit here and do nothing. God expects us to be exercised with the jobs that we have. There's an old saying that says, idleness is what? A devil's workshop. Let me ask you this. Why did God want a woman to marry and bear children? There was at least one reason. So that she does not become idle and become a busybody. I'm serious. That's what the text says. Okay? Little gal, 20, 30 years, 40 years old, and she doesn't have a husband. She doesn't have any children. Okay, back then, it was hard for women to even work, wasn't it? And guess what? Watch out. Brett Horn said that. He's sitting down here on the front row. You ladies can take that up with him. Okay? But that was one of the reasons is that a woman had work to do. God assigned a woman work to do. But that work was where? That work was in the home, wasn't it? Caring for her husband, caring for her children. And when she did that, she wouldn't, if she did it properly, she wouldn't have time to be out here and be a busybody and be in everybody's affairs and trying to figure out what's going on in everybody else's life. So God wants individuals to work. It is something that God has authorized. Now notice this next verse. Wow. He hath made everything beautiful in His time. Also, He hath set the world in their heart so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from beginning to end. Man. Now Solomon's experiment involves a world without God, doesn't it? If there is no God, if there's just man lives on this earth and then he dies, there's no purpose to life. But through the course of the book, Solomon also indicates that I'm not an unbeliever. I do believe that there is a God, and he'll inject God into the text from time to time and remind people about God. And here's one time when he does that. Notice he notes two things that God has done. He has made everything, what? Beautiful in His time. All that God has created, designed, ordered, and set in motion is beautiful. That little word beautiful. Strong says that it means beautiful. Brown Driver and Briggs says that it means fair, handsome. Barnes says that it means fit. Watch this next definition. In harmony with the whole work of God. God's works are well done. They are ordered in harmony. And there's beauty in them all. Wow. This includes the idea that God designed man to labor in this world. Folks, that's part of the what? The beauty of the world. If every one of us just quit working, sat down, and did nothing, would this world become a chaotic mess? Absolutely. Rodney, what you got? In His time, absolutely. We don't sing it, do we? we have to know it. Have to have somebody to know it to sing it. Okay? Yes. Well, are there certain things that are needed in His time? You know, I don't want the moon out in the day, right? And I don't want the sun out at night. They're beautiful where? In their time, in their setting, in their place, in their position. Is work a beautiful thing? Yes. When? In its time. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. And the seventh day you what? you rested. And folks, if a Jew didn't rest on the seventh day, you want to know what was the punishment? Death. Death. Stoning. You don't work on... You see, everything is good when? In its time, isn't it? But there's some things, when they're not in their time, they're bad, aren't they? They're bad. What's that? Oh, yeah. Right. In their time. Right, in their time. You know, the four seasons, you know, and if they ever got out of that loop, we'd be in a mess, wouldn't we? You know? And so yeah, everything's in its time. Everything God set this world up in an orderly fashion, didn't He? Just the way He wanted it, so it works absolutely perfectly if we work in harmony with it. Okay? There's a lesson that I put down there. When Solomon experimented with the world, he did not see an accident. He did not see an accident. He did not see random forces haphazardly working. He didn't see mutations forming over hundreds of millions of years, finally producing something positive. No, he saw God's order, His structure, His creativity, and His beauty in the world. And anybody who can't see that is a fool. Isn't that true? The fool has said in their heart, there is no what? There is no God. Okay? There's been some atheists die recently, and wouldn't it be interesting to see what they woke up to on the other side? What would be even more interesting than that is to see their reaction to what they woke up to on the other side. Okay, what? Oh no, not so, but it's got its time, doesn't it? And He created it as well. Now this next part is interesting. So first of all, God made the earth. He made it beautiful. He made it orderly. He made it just the way He desired it to function. But notice this second thing, and this involves man. And He also hath set the world in their heart. Okay, talking about man. He set the world in man's heart. Now, y'all probably get tired of me defining words. Okay? That's all Vic does, is define words. Defines this word, defines that word. Let me tell you something. If you don't find words, you don't know what's going on. Would you? He set the world in their heart. What does that mean? We could just make up anything if we didn't what? If we didn't define the word. Strong defines the word as this: concealed, vanishing. Watch this next one. Time out of mind, eternity. Brown Driver and Briggs says forever, always, everlasting, unending or indefinite future, eternity. God has set eternity in the hearts of men. Okay? True or false? We are eternal beings. That's not true. That is not true. You are not an eternal being. You had a beginning and you'll have an end. Right? Now God will have to make you into an eternal being. Okay? And He will, but you are not eternal. But you want to know what is? You have something in your heart that God has put there that's what? That's eternal. Okay? He hath put eternity in their hearts. If you go back and study civilizations, and it doesn't matter how far you go back, and it doesn't matter how remote they are, and it doesn't matter how crazy they seem to us. You want to know the one thing that runs in common with almost every one of them? They believed in something beyond themselves, a higher being, a deity. Now the question is this: why? Because God put eternity in their hearts. When a man rejects the idea of eternity, rejects the idea of something not being beyond this life, he has to harden his heart to what God put in there. You know that? It's a whole lot easier to believe in eternity and a God who lives in eternity than it is not to. You're crazier. It'd be bad. You know, it'd be horrible. Okay? The eternal God has placed the concept of eternity in the hearts of all men. If this world is all there is, and man can only know and understand things that come through the five senses, how did he ever conceive of an eternal God? Now that's what the scientists tell us, right? We are what? We are products of what? This world. The only thing that we know is what we can touch, see, feel, taste, and experience with our five senses. That's all we can know. Well, then how did we ever even come up with the concept of God? See, the very fact that you and I can believe that there is a God proves that what? There is one. Because it's He who put that thought there. It's unbelievable. Point number 2, man knows something exists beyond this creation. He yearns for it. He studies it. He seeks it. He worships it. Doesn't he? How does he know? One reason is because of the beauty of the creation of God, isn't it? The heavens declare the glory of God. And the firmament what? Showeth His handiwork. This idea that there is no God, folks, it's very scary. Okay? And something we need to understand is that in the theory of Marxism and communism, there is no God. Okay? There is no God in that theory. And we don't need to throw away that and accept a system that has no God. Okay? Need to be very careful. Even though man has the knowledge, this sense still, no man can find out the work that God has made from the beginning to the end. I know there's a God out there, right? I know there's a God that created this world. I know there's a God that exists. I know there's a God to be worshiped. But guess what I will never do? I will never be able to comprehend that God in His totality. He says, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Man. Yes, sir. Yep.
They will explain the proof theory for Earth, but yet they look to the stars for other human life. When the stars aren't like
Right.
Earth is so unique, but yet you can't explain that same proof theory for the other stars.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, their theory is so short-sighted that it's terrible. I want you to look at this next point. I got to thinking about this, okay? We cannot find out God's work from beginning to end, okay? I want us to assume, okay, now I'm going to say this again. I want us to assume that we believe evolution is true. I don't, okay? But let's assume that it is. If evolution is true, how long has man been on the planet? Anybody know? Now I'm talking about man himself. Okay, not everything. Man. About 3 million years. Okay, now folks, that's a lot longer than what the creationists believe. 6,000 years. Isn't it a lot longer? Okay, and that's the reason I chose to become an evolutionist right now. Okay, because I got a lot more time that man has been here. 3 million years man has been on this planet. And guess what? We have only made it as far as human life to the moon. To the moon! 286,000 miles. That's the farthest that man has got away from the earth as far as himself. Now here's my, how long, if it's taken us 3 million years to get to the moon, How long is it going to take us to get to Mars? Really and truly. And you know, there's other planets out there too, aren't there?
Not only that, it takes the time it takes to multiply. If you was to have the first human being 3 million years ago, if you look back over time, just in the past 20 years, we've doubled our population.
Yep.
Now, if you go back before that, it's all in line with what the Bible says.
Right.
You can go back and you can see, and these people that are so smart, that are mathematicians and everything, they know it, because you can do the math.
Yep.
And you can see the development over time, the multiplication of the first person.
Right.
And see over time that fits about 12,000 years or whatever. You know, it certainly doesn't fit 3 million years.
Oh no, the earth couldn't hold the population.
No.
If what they are saying is true.
Exactly.
Absolutely, that's right. But I want you to think about that. We've developed a spacecraft that has been able to go to Mars, right? They've landed on Mars. We've got a spacecraft that is out there that is going to the edge of our solar system, right? But guys, there are hundreds and thousands of solar systems as big as ours, beyond ours. Okay? We haven't even gotten, we've only gotten man to the moon. How many more millions and billions of years is it going to take for us to get beyond our solar system? See, that was my next point. He has yet to discover all the depths of the ocean. Isn't that true? We've not even gone down to the very depths of the sea to see what's down there. And the evolutionist said, now we've been here 3 million years. What's taking you so long? You want to know what's taking you so long? The fact that this earth didn't evolve, that you are not the God of this world, and that God created this world. A God who is what? A God who is beyond our comprehension. A God whose wisdom, a God whose works are past our ever finding out. You see, there's two things that are revealed. Number one, the greatness of God and the smallness of man. I love Romans 11, verse 33. Oh, the depth and riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are His judgments and His ways past finding out. Oh yeah, we'll learn a few things, won't we? And we can increase our knowledge a little bit. Let me tell you something, our lives are so short here that, guys, it's going to take an eternity to find out what this world's all about. You know it? And then we've only what? Just scratched the surface. We've only scratched the surface. Man should appreciate the greatness of God. Sadly, there's some who can only see themselves as great, even though they admit there's so much more to discover and learn. That's what's amazing. It's baffling, isn't it? They know how big the world is and how great the world is and how marvelous the world is. And yet their pride and their arrogance keeps them from admitting that there's a Creator. It's sad. Ecclesiastes 3:12. I know that there is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. He's talking about man's what? His labors. Notice what he says. I know there is what? No good in them. He's already established that conclusion, has he not? There's no good in labor. And there's a couple of reasons for it, and we've talked about those reasons, haven't we? When a man works, he just dies. You know, how many of you have worked a lot in your life? A lot of you? How many of you have worked hard in your life? And you want to know what's going to happen to you? You're just going to die. Ooh, all that work and I'm just going to croak. Somebody will take your job, absolutely. Okay? Now somebody might say, now wait a minute, preacher. Wait a minute. I got a house and I got a car and I got clothes. And you're going to die. And guess what? Somebody else going to get that stuff that you worked so hard for. Ha ha. You really think you're something, don't you? You got all that stuff. And you're just going to what? You're just going to die. And somebody else is going to get it. And guess what? You've got stuff you love, you appreciate, you care for. It's valuable to you. And the next person that comes along and gets it, don't give a rip about it. Yep, this is goodwill. You know? I'm about to get a fight going down here. I done got a deep amen from an elder. He's looking at his wife when he said it. I'm just stirring the pot down here. Man. Solomon says, from that perspective, there's no good in them. Okay? But then he turns right around and he says this, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. Guys, if you're going to enjoy your labors, do it when? Do it in your life. Okay? That's what God created them for, to be enjoyed here. Okay? Labor isn't going to benefit you at all when you die. Okay? But it does benefit us here. Can a man rejoice in his labors? Yeah. I've used my work to provide for my family. Is that a good thing? Yeah, that's a good thing. I've used my job to do what? To be self-reliant, right? I don't have to rely on somebody else. I can be self-sufficient. I can provide for my needs, and that gives me a sense of what? Of pride, doesn't it? I don't need other people to take care of me. It amazes me how this mindset in our world is today. Take care of me, take care of me, take care of me. Where do we get that mindset? It's not what God intended. I can rejoice too that I've been successful in some of my accomplishments, haven't I? Maybe over the course of 40 years I've had one good sermon. You know, maybe over 40 years. But you see, have there been some people do some great things in their fields of work? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know. And we're glad that they were here, aren't they? And also, have we been able to enjoy some of the rewards of our labor? Yeah, you get to buy those antiques. There you go, Emily. I put in a plug for you. Okay. Trying to help you out. Okay. You tell him, these are the joys of my labor right here. You leave me alone about my antiques. But we get to go on vacations, don't we? We get to have some luxuries in life. You know, I don't have to have a Flintstone mobile car that I have to pedal. Okay, get a little air conditioning, absolutely. Indoor toilets. You know, there's some things we get to enjoy from life, from our labors. And notice that he says this too, and to do good in this life. Absolutely. We've assisted others. We've given to good causes, haven't we? Turn over to the book of Ephesians. I didn't write this down. I probably should have. Ephesians chapter 4, if I can find it real quick. Is that the second bell already rung? Look at verse 28 of Ephesians 4. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands that thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. Isn't that something? Solomon says, let the thief do what? Quit stealing. You go to work. And the reason I want you to work is so that you can give it to somebody who stands in need. Wow. It's pretty potent, isn't it? Paul writes in 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19, "Charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy." Now listen to this. "That they do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to distribute, willing to communicate, laying up in store for themselves a good foundation against the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life." God gave rich people a lot of stuff to do what with? To help others with. That's what He gave it, and that's what He tells you. You got a lot, you better what? You need to give a lot.